Following the gruesome attack against the northern command of the Ethiopian National Defense Force by TPLF forces in the dark of November 2020, the government launched a law enforcement operation. Right from the outset of the operation, several Western media outlets have unconditionally skewed their narrative in favor of the criminal TPLF. However, some international political analysts and independent journalists who stand for the truth and close follow the Ethiopian's law enforcement operation have exposed the belligerent nature of TPLF, and they have traveled to areas to witness the horrifying pains facing people there. Jamal Countess, an American photojournalist, has taken a lots of pictures of war-torn northern Ethiopia, where the TPLF has caused tremendous human sufferings and massive destructions of infrastructure. Noting TPLF instigated the war, Countess blamed major Western media outlets for deliberate skewing of events to fit the TPLF narrative.
Even now, even today, there are still people who say that there's no Northern Command attacks. You know, Western media outlets, and they only will admit to one base being attacked. They don't talk about the scope of the attacks. They barely talk about my cadre, you know? And every step of the way, they frame it like these are people who are fighting for their freedom. These are gallant freedom fighters, you know? And they frame it like, oh, well, the Amhara militia this, the Amhara this, Fano that. It's, you know, it's all about Amhara, you know, which is straight out of the TPLF playbook.
Alistair Thompson, editor-in-chief of Scoop Independent News and who is also observer of northern Ethiopian conflict, believes that the information war against Ethiopia began before the war itself.
The information warfare activities of the TPLF are something that can be described as what we call full spectrum dominance. So in order to win a war, it's important not just to win the war itself, but you also attempt to try to completely dominate the information space. And within the context of that, we don't know the detail of how this information operation has been executed. But on the face of it, we have a very large number of Western journalists whose research was completely compromised. I mean, including from major news agencies like the Associated Press, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Economist. I mean, all of these news organizations appear to have been willing to take their information from directly from the TPLF and then repeat it as if statements that are made by the TPLF are automatically true. Now, why did they do that? Why did all these things happen? I mean, one of the other issues there, which I think you're about to ask a question about this, but is that the TPLF has, over its 30 years of rule, it has people inside the United Nations, like hundreds of people. It has people inside the State Department. It has people inside government and closely connected to governments in Europe. The TPLF's generals who have perpetrated this most recent war were trained in the United Kingdom, and they were taught these very, very techniques that they have used. It will try to say that somehow this is some form of sort of natural Ethiopian sort of disagreeableness amongst the people here. I mean, but that's not what I've seen here, and it's not the truth.
They are basically working with the TPLF, may have a couple of staff members that are affiliated with the TPLF. They're definitely a part of the TPLF network. Everybody is playing this game of it's so hard for journalists to get into Ethiopia. And I just watched 3 journalists from 3 different outlets go into Ethiopia and work. 2 of them are still there, you know? And it's like, it's that lie is something that needs to be broken. It's not hard for journalists to get into Ethiopia. It's not. You just have to be a credible journalist. But this excuse of it's hard for journalists to get into the country is just that. It's an excuse, and it's a lie that people are using to basically, not be accountable for their mistakes or for their errors, their intentional errors, or their spreading of propaganda.
Anne Garrison, journalist, editor, researcher, and radio, as well as a multimedia reporter, noted that TPLF's horrific ethnic cleansing attack against Amhara people during its decades of tyrannical administration requires further studies in those areas that she has visited.
And I just came back from Gondar, the University of Gondar, where the horrific ethnic cleansing, attacks and ethnic cleansing of Amhara people by the TPLF when they occupied that part of the country was being exposed. And I thought, well, this is horrific. This is horrific, and yes, it should be studied further. The professors who had studied it for a year thought it required further study and that there should be a museum to commemorate it. I didn't see a single headline outside the Ethiopian press. People who just search for Ethiopia now, all they would find would be the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International report. And the story from Gondar, from the University of Gondar, should get out to the world, especially the world that's been told that they should intervene in Ethiopia because of the suffering in Tigray.
Anne Garrison has also shared us what she has witnessed and visited internally displaced people campus in Amhara State to personally witness the ordeal people have been through.
I have seen Amhara, and the suffering is horrible. I mean, I saw people in IDP camps in Sokoto without enough food or water, far from enough food or water. Only a few, one of 3 IDP camps had mattresses to sleep on, and there were no sanitation facilities that I could see. In one case, it was particularly bad because there were animals around in the same place the people were, and the people were right on the edge of town. These are people who desperately need help in these camps around Sokoto.
Professor Anne Fitzgerald, who is director of the Balsile School of International Affairs and a professor in Wilfrid Laurier University's Political Science Department, is among the political analysts who visited the war-torn place both in Amhara and Afar regional states.
So I did visit Amhara and Afar, and I saw that the humanitarian need on the ground in some areas in particular was very desperate. Afar in particular, because the communities are very remote and had hundreds of thousands had come down from the 5 communities in the northern region which were under attack and which were under occupation by the TPLF fighters. And I also saw areas of Wallo, North and South Wallo, that had been deeply affected by damage in the conflict, serious infrastructural damage to their basic critical services. So health infrastructure had been completely destroyed, and not just destroyed but looted as well. Education infrastructure from primary schools to universities had not just been damaged but fired upon, bombed, so buildings were shelled. But similar to the patterns in Afar, they were looted also, to the point where copper wiring was taken, fuse boxes were taken out of the wall, rubber hoses were taken from the fire hoses, every desk and chair was damaged, every window was fired out, every door was destroyed.
Recently, Anne Fitzgerald has published her research under the title The Frontline Voices Tigrayans Speak on the Realities of Life Under an Insurgency Regime. Since access to the Tigrayan region is difficult due to TPLF's careful control, Professor Anfiz Gerald travels to campus for internally displaced persons, one in Amhara accommodating 620 Tigrayan civilians and another as Awash Basin Center near Chifra, Afar, accommodating approximately 15,000 captured or surrendered Tigrayan fighters. According to her survey research, Ethiopians of Tigrayan descent residing both inside and outside of Tigray have contacted her and requested greater scrutiny of grassroots Tigrayan opinion on the ongoing conflict in northern Ethiopia. Those silenced voices have been characterized by many Western media analysts and English language media as supportive of the Tigrayan People Liberation Front TPLF as a vanguard armed group that exercise authoritarian control. Or respondents interviewed at the Jara camp argued that there could be no peace in Tigray as long as TPLF existed.